Hello, everyone. Welcome to our first episode of our Staged VC podcast event. I'm Ch0, the technical producer behind this project, and I'm very excited to host this and moderate this for our very first kind of like real talk behind the scenes of Project Eden's Garden. And also very excited to talk with you guys of course, on any questions that you will have later on as we continue with the FAQ session. But before we start, I would like to give you guys a quick overview on how this podcast will be structured. To start off, we will have just a general question round for our guests, generally about behind the scenes during the development of Project Eden's Garden. And after a few questions, or some general questions, we will transition over to a small FAQ session where you can guys ask some questions, concerns, anything that floats your boat in that sense. The mod team will kind of like moderate the chat as we go on. So in case something is being missed on in terms of like questions, they will be pinging me, so I know that I missed some questions on the way here. Joining us today are our lovely devlog extraordinaires Juve and Taco Maori, who will both be. I'm honored, first of all, to that they have put their time aside to get in here and talk about Project Eden's Garden, but as well as Sweden, who is our lead programmer for the game and kind of like did all the heavy lifting in terms of like technical aspects of it. So Juve, Taco, and Sweden, thank you so much for taking the time, and I'm very excited to talk to you guys about PEG. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having us, and just want to echo what Ch0 said. Thanks everyone for coming out, listening in, and pretty excited to jump right into this.
Perfect. So I just wanted to start off by a round of introduction. So Taco, why don't you start first, then Juve, and then Sweden?
All right. So, hi. I'm. What's my usual quote again? Good morning, afternoon, or evening, ladies and gentlemen, and anything not in between. I'm Taco, the director of PEG, the one you always hear in every devlog. And, yeah, I'm here and in a podcast. So, I do want to actually go over what a director does for PEG, because I feel like I'm never really clear on what exactly I do in this, other than administrative things, of course. So obviously, when you hear a road director, you obviously associate with it with like a leader role, right? So I also do other work as well on the team, such as 3D modeling, 2D assets, literally everything except programming or music. As a leader myself, our vision of the team is to really promote a healthy work environment on this team, and that's what I mostly believe in that drives the project forward. Yeah, that's it for me.
Absolutely, Taco. Thank you so much for coming. Next up, we have Juve, the consulting director and one of the most awesome team members here. Juve, please introduce yourselves.
I don't know about all that, but hey everyone, I'm Juvie, also known as Dick Hayne, or I guess Dick Durden now, as I'm transitioning my last name, but that's a separate story, separate thing. I am the consulting director on Eden's Garden. I've been with the team for, I actually don't know how long. I think over 2 years, but I'm almost like scared to look and confirm that at this point. I have been working on Eden's Garden for quite some time. I'm a gardener by night and by weekend, but during the week, I serve as both a lead producer and game director. I've been in the game development business for 7 or 8 years now. I worked at a studio called Counterplay, where I worked on Duelist, Godfall, a PS5 launch title, as a producer, community manager, designer, balance guy. And then worked on some unannounced projects at Counterplay for about a year and a half, which is probably about the time that I joined the Eden's Garden team initially. And these days, I recently kind of founded my own unannounced studio about a year and a half ago. I've been working with a small team on some I guess, top secret projects. As consulting director, just to quickly go over that, I mean, Taco's the real star of the show. I'm just basically here to
Too nice.
I'm just basically here to help Taco any way I can. This is largely a volunteer, student-run game at the end of the day. So I guess in some ways I serve as the person who, has shipped a AAA title, an indie title prior, and just try to give guidance and advice, which I'm sure we'll talk about plenty as we go deeper into the questions. And try to make sure that everybody on the team is happy, knows what the priorities are, and yeah, just try to be the best support system. As a little fun fact, just as an aside before I pass it to Sweden, Taco and I recently got to meet IRL, which was crazy, and pretty amazing. Because again, this is like a fully remote team, so it's always kind of a joy when we get to actually meet face to face. But that's me.
Thank you very much, Jove. And last but not least, we have Sweden, who is our lead programmer and engine kind of like guy who knows everything around the Unity engine, and basically built up the DR editor from basically from what it was at the beginning to what it is now for Project Ian's Garden. Welcome, Sweden. Thank you for joining us.
Always happy to be here. And thank you for that lovely introduction. Hello, guys. I'm Sweden. I'm the lead programmer, and I take care of core gameplay mechanics, as well as anything technical related to any future and thought-up mechanics that the team wants to make. I also focus on studying the Danganronpa games to create that same kind of quality that we have in our game.
Thank you very much, Sweden. And of course, even though I briefly introduced myself, hey guys, my name is Shade. I'm the technical producer behind Project Ian's Garden, and I'm kind of like doing all the partly behind the scenes or basically things that need some more attention, such as like translation, localization, as well as taking over all of the marketing and PR stuff for Project Ian's Garden to make sure that the things that our awesome team does moves over to the faces of you guys. Aside from that, I'm also working as a technical artist, so everything that in Engine you see in Unity in terms of lighting in the rooms that you have seen throughout like the chapter, the prologue of the game was partly done by me with everything in regards to that, and as well as kind of like coordinating any subtitles for devlogs and making sure that our devlogs are being documented properly for us to release those videos. All right, and with that being said, thank you so much for first of all for actually being here once again. So to start off as like a general question, before we even start with Project Ian's Garden itself, I was like interested of how did you guys got like hear about like about your interest in video games as well. Like how did your journey start in like breaking into the industry or like just doing something with game development? Taco, why don't you start first with that question?
All right. So it all started with my grandma stealing a Game Boy when I was 8.
Your grandma?
How she didn't get how she didn't get a criminal record is completely unknown, but we don't talk about that. We up. So it had a copy of Pokemon Emerald as well as a copy of Fire Red that comes with it. So that was number one. That was the day where I first touched that video game, and number two, I learned that there are such thing as non-attacking moves and buff moves. Because as a kid, I did not save the game while playing Pokemon Emerald, and I just kept restarting here and there. Please don't ask. But anyway, that's basically how I first touched my video game. But how I got into the industry itself is pretty interesting. At first, I actually wanted to do animation as a child. I thought animated shows was really cool. I was a big fan of all those like TV shows like Amazing World of Gumball, Adventure Time, the usual that everyone loves. But over time, I actually kind of looked into the game industry. So what really inspired this was actually was me going to my high school. So I was looking at all like the available positions to be in that high school. And of course, I first applied for animation, right? But then I saw this position called, going into the video game industry, like a game artist. And I was all, that sounds interesting. So I kind of applied it as my second choice. The reason why I didn't get into the first choice was because I forgot to bring all my life figure drawings, so whoopsie. But I was actually really happy that I got into the second position, which is the game art industry. So I actually knew someone from the game art industry beforehand. I met this person, I met my teacher beforehand, so we actually have connections and whatnot. And that was actually my first taste in networking. So after being in the game industry for a while, how that happened was really like through high school, and I just learned that it's just so much fun, right? In animation, you just really just animate, do art, and do concept art and all that stuff. But in the game industry, for me at least, I get to do some light programming, design, 2D and 3D art, and a lot of things that I get to do that it's not really involved in animation, the animation industry itself. So I just really dove really deep into how the video game pipeline really goes, and I just decided one day, like, oh yeah, I kind of want to be a leader of some sorts, because I'm kind of like a jack of all trades, where I can't really choose what I want to do, because I can't really be an artist all the time, because I really like designing things in the background. So yeah, that's how I really kind of got into this. So for entering Project Eden's Garden itself, I was actually introduced to this project in February of 2021 as a normal like artist on the team, and then I just scaled up and became art director, and then the director in October of 2021, the same year. So yeah.
I've got to ask as well as like a follow-up question. Is there like anything that inspired you, like particularly in an animation, where you thought, oh my God, I want to do that one day? In that sense, is there like anything in particular that sparked your like inspiration in that sense, or was it just like a general interest?
It was partially a general interest as well as a drive, because I feel like certain IPs in the industry certain companies do not treat their IPs well, so I'm just like, well, I kind of want my own IP and I want to change that.
True. All right.
I'm talking about you big companies, but go on.
I mean, yeah, it's very interesting to like see in terms of like from just a general interest to now being a director for a fan project, how things like kind of like evolve over the years. But since we are back at the topic, I wanted to ask Juve, how did your journey kind of like start? I mean, especially since you have like over 7 years of experience now in it. Like, I'm very interested in how like your journey began.
Sure. So my love for gaming, similar to Taco, actually, I am the oldest member on the team. So unlike Emerald was not my first Pokemon, I was around for Blue and Red, if you can believe it.
Oh yeah.
I was also around for the original Nintendo Entertainment System. But similar to Taco, I think my love for gaming really started with Pokemon Blue and Red. Funny enough, so we have some overlap in our origin stories in that way. And I'll make you feel a little bit better, Taco. I have two weird things with Pokemon Blue and Red that I'll share. Since you had struggled, you didn't figure out how the save function worked. For me, I spent an hour trying to get out of the first room in Pokemon. I couldn't, as a young one, I couldn't understand that the stairs were in the corner, painted on like a 2D platform. I was like, oh, it's all a floor because it's all a 2D panel. So I was like, how do you get out? There's no door. I didn't understand the concept of stairs being in the upper right corner. So that was a challenge for a young juvie. The other thing was I couldn't figure out how to get past the guy who taught you how to catch Weedle in like literally the second town. I'm forgetting names now because I'm on the spot. But because I couldn't figure out how to get past him, I just was like, oh, I guess you just like train your Pokemon. So I went in that little patch of grass right before the path to the Elite Four, and I just trained my Charmander for hours. And finally, a friend noticed that I was doing this. Like, came over for a play date, and we're like, "What? You're still there? Oh, this is you give the parcel to Oak, and then you can get past and buy Pokeballs from the shop and all that other stuff." By then, I had a level 55 Charizard when I went to go fight Brock. So the game was incredibly easy for me because I literally trained my Charizard to level 55 before ever taking on a gym leader. So I struggled with Pokemon early on as well, but it was definitely where I found my love for gaming. I didn't go to school for, different from Taco's story, backstory and background. I did not go to school for gaming. I actually got a degree from Western Kentucky University in creative writing, and then later got my master's degree in communication. So I really didn't, there's a VHS of me from way back in the day with some of my friends, a recording of us saying that we all wanted to be game developers. But I think I lost sight of that, at some point in my life. I just didn't think I was smart enough. I was a pretty bad student, to be frank. I didn't do particularly well in school, so I always thought game development was for smart people. So which is kind of a crappy way to think, but I was a little self-deprecating. So I lost. I never really thought it was going to be for me. And then funny enough, so I'm in Illinois. I go to Illinois State University for grad school, studying communication. Was lucky enough to get a scholarship. And my now fiance, Gabriella Devia Allen, or Gabby Durden, as she's now known as her stage name, was also known as La Tigress on the LCS. She's an amazing esports commentator, host, and songwriter, musician. At the time we had just moved in together, and we were broke college students. And she was I was in grad school. She was trying to figure out what she was going to do in life. And the new Sims had dropped. I think Sims 3 had just dropped, and she's like, "Oh man, I really want to play Sims 3, but we're broke. We literally can't afford to buy a $50 game." So I was like, "Ooh, well, we can't really afford that, but maybe if we bought it and you streamed it, maybe we could recoup our money in donations eventually. Maybe we could break even on The Sims." So that was the first time that she ever tried streaming, and she immediately fell in love with it. That evolved into literally what her esports career is now. That's relevant to my origin story as a game developer, because as she started streaming, I was like, huh, that's cool. She's creating content around games. That's something that I've always thought I could do. So I started my own YouTube channel. I was very much inspired by her. She just took the leap of faith in a way that I never did. So I was like, I want to do that too. So I had made a YouTube channel when I had found Duelist, funny enough, by Counterplay Games in the early alpha days. I found the game, I fell in love with it, and I started making YouTube content. So one day I just kind of reached out to the CEO, Keith Lee, on a whim. And I was like, "Hey man, I love your game. I make YouTube content, deck list. It was a little tactical card game, Final Fantasy Tactics meets Hearthstone, basically." So I reached out to him. I was like, "Hey, can I have some free packs so I can open them on my YouTube channel?" He was really nice. He did it. I started hosting Duelist tournaments so Gabby could cast them, and he really liked the events that I hosted. So he's like, "Hey, you host better events than we do as the developers. You want to just join part-time as a community manager and do what you're doing but for us?" And I was like, and he's like, "With a budget?" And I was like, "Yeah, that would be amazing." So now I'm 20, 22, 23, working part-time as a community manager, working full-time as a grad student. That kind of slowly ramped up over time. I took a teaching position at Illinois State University full-time.
Oh, really?
And then literally, this was weird, man. This was bizarre. Then 2 weeks later, after I accept the position, Keith reaches out. He's like, "Hey, we're gonna I'd kind of ramped up to working 20 or so hours a week on Duelist, and did I guess I'm messing up the story a little bit because I did a little bit of full-time work, but anyways, it was always kind of contractor basis. I thought not too much of it. I was like, one day this will end and that'll be okay, and I'll be a teacher, whatever. And then he was telling me "Hey, we're gonna ramp up this Godfall project. We would love you to be the founding producer. You're really good at what you do. You're really organized." But I had just accepted it. When you're teaching at a university, you accept for the year. You can't just halfway through a semester be like, "Okay, I'm outie. I'm done teaching this." So right. I was like, "Hey, I would love to take that position. I'd love to be a founding producer on this AAA title. It's amazing. It's fully funded, but I'm teaching." And I'm like, "Would you be cool with me working these two jobs in parallel?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm fine with that. It's no big deal." So for a year of my life, I was teaching classes, and between teaching those classes, running production calls for the animation team, the character art team. I literally have memories where I would be walking into my rhetoric class about to do, an hour and a half lecture. And I was wrapping up a call with animators, "Okay, are you going to have get your FBXs on Dropbox, and I'll get them integrated into Unreal later today, and we'll hook them up. So it was a very chaotic year of my life working those two jobs. But that was really how I got my break in the industry formally. And then from there, I worked on Godfall for 4 years or so, getting it all the way from early concept, pre-production, production. Worked on the major DLC pack as well as the big major expansion pack that we did. And then the rest is kind of history from there. And then I don't remember exactly when I joined the Eden's Garden team. I wish I did. It was after the trailer had dropped. Funny enough, I watched the trailer on YouTube the same way I'm sure a lot of us found our way here. And I was like, oh dang, that's awesome. Spike Chunsoft is like bringing it back. I legit was like tricked. I was like, this is definitely Spike Chunsoft. And then when I found out it was a fan game, I reached out to the leadership at the time and was like, hey, I don't know if you guys need somebody with experience, but I kind of know what I'm doing. I've shipped stuff before. I've been in the war room. If that's valuable to you, I would I wanted to learn how to build visual novels. It's always been a passion of mine. I want to found my own studio and make my own. So I would love to learn with you guys. Maybe I can add some value. And got brought onto the team pretty immediately. Met Taco and the crew here, and that's been kind of how it all came together. So that's me. I'll talk. That's enough talking.
It's I just want to reiterate, it's so interesting how kind of a rainbow of different experience you had throughout your life. But I guess it's kind of to be expected when breaking into the industry, that getting knowledge from all different kinds of disciplines. And perhaps there was also a situation where your job as a teacher was pretty handy in working in game development. Was there some sort of situation during the development of Godfall that there was a case, or is there something similar that happened to you?
Yeah. I mean, all of the experience. I mean, you would probably know this better than anyone, Shade. Being a teacher trains you well for being a producer, right? Because a teacher is a lot of things. There's someone who has to know how to kind of inspire, how to speak in front of groups, and production is no different. So the funny part was, where I lacked formal training, never having gone to a school that taught me how to make games. I had great people skills. I was I really was able to. I was a good listener. I was able to make sure people felt heard. I was able to teach people. I would learn things about integrating something in Engine, and I could teach it to my animation team, my character art team. So no doubt. And it is funny how you jump around. I mean, the number of things. I sold lawn care briefly. I sold. There's a funny story of me joining Liberty Mutual and selling insurance for 3 months, but I never actually sold insurance. I just kind of swindled them for a free trip to Florida because they trained me for 3 months, and at the end of the training, they sent me to Florida for a week, which was amazing, and then I literally quit the next day. Anyways, neither here nor there, but yes,
such a
rainbow of
move.
experience, as you put it. It was a pretty Chad move. I was pretty proud of that one. But anyways, that's me.
Yeah, but there's you put up a very important point in terms of game production in general, is to kind of be aware of even though you're not specialized in it, but be aware of all kinds of areas, getting to know what the status of the project is, and trying to get a cool head of everything. This is something that I think everyone is kind of familiar in our team, especially up to the release of our prologue, but I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, so let's move on to Sweden. It's who probably has to say a lot about this stuff coming from Juve. No, I'm just kidding. Basically, how did your journey start?
In what?
In gaming general, how you got your interest in programming, what kind of transpired you to be a programmer?
Well, for most people, video games are just awesome. In the early days, Pokemon Yellow was my first. I had a little Game Boy Advanced blue. It's actually right in front of me. But when it came to actually, doing coding and all that, I started out doing HTML. And I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And I eventually, just kind of did small amounts of coding when I was young. But when I got to high school, I was taught C# in a class high school had. And I actually got 2 certifications in IB C Sharp. I got like a Microsoft Technology Associate in Software Development Fundamentals. So like I know how to make, .exes and programs and all that. And I learned, and I love games. So I was like, when I saw that Unity was made in C Sharp, I was like, I know C Sharp. Why don't I try to make, something in Unity? And that's actually when I started hearing about like the fangame community, and I'm kind of dove in basically.
Right,
And
right.
the rest is history.
And that's like where you found your editor, right? And got like to know
Yeah.
how it was worked. So, tell me about like how it started, like, or what was it like out of like how do you say this out of randomness that you found it or stumbled upon it, or how did you kind of like gotten to work with it at the beginning?
So that's an interesting story. I remember on YouTube, I watched a execution made by Danganfran, who did Danganronpa 4K. He does great work. He is awesome. And I had just seen it. I was like, I remember Danganronpa. I liked the franchise, and I saw that he had a programming opening position, and this was around the time where I was like, oh, I should try doing Unity. And so I applied, and he accepted it. And for a time, I started going into the that's kind of how I got into the fangame community, and I eventually discovered DR editor from that. So yeah.
I see. And then it kind of like transpired to do your own thing, and then you found like Project Eden's Garden, right?
Yeah, I think there was a moment where I was like, I got really into it. Was I used to just sit in a Discord call on the 4K server, and I would just stream whatever I was doing, working on the 4K project. And I remember some guy like coming in, looking over to see what I was doing. And they told me like they were very impressed with like what little knowledge I had, because we were talking back and forth, and long story short, like I was, and everybody had been like, oh, this is really cool. And it turns out that lo and behold, the guy that came in to take a look at what I was doing was K Hearts, who is, if you are unfamiliar, he is one of the technical directors for Danganronpa Kill Cure. So that was awesome. I've been talking to him since. He's great. But yeah.
We do love K Hearts.
Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for answering this question. Even though it's like a very loaded question at the beginning to ask this, but I think the community in general was very interested about your backstory and how like you guys came together in Project Eden's Garden. And for me, it's also a very unique like experience to see how the team kind of like all it came together. Now, as for our next topic, let's talk about the Chapter 0 development of Project Eden's Garden in general. And to start off, I would just like to talk about like the process in general. So like by starting off with Taco first. So Taco, when you were kind of like at the beginning stage of like developing the prologue, what was your like first instinct, or how what was like basically something that you really enjoyed working on?
Let me think about that.
No worries.
Something I enjoy about in game development, that's a tough question, especially when it's regarding game development. It's something
right?
I enjoy. Honestly, I would say that the part I really enjoy about like being in a part of team, right? Okay, so before I actually tackle that question, I do want to give some context, okay, on how the timeline of Chapter 0 happened.
Sure.
So remember, I did say that only after like October 2021, I became director, right? So before that, like when I was being the artist, I was actually going around in every chat being terminally online and basically talking to literally everyone I could see. I was really, really happy to meet like a lot of the developers of the team. I thought everyone was insanely talented. And I don't know, I just, for some reason, I really wanted to be friends with literally everyone. You can see where the director thing came from. But like, yeah, that's how it really, that part of game development, oh my god, that was so fun. Because every day I get to join VC and I get to ask each member of the team or just anyone in general from the server. Because at that time, I think the server was around like at most 9K or like 5K-ish members. It wasn't that many. But I was mostly chilling around, like talking to literally everyone I could see. And it was like so fun because I basically learned how to socialize really well, like after that. And during the process of it. So after I became director, that's when we really started to make assets for the game. So we did have previous assets before, but it wasn't really following like any general direction. So we really had to create a lot of like documents and whatnot to really push off like the game development. So really most of like the starting stuff, like some script writing as well as like getting the story skeleton out, really happened in February, around like before I became director. So like around the February 2021 to October 2021 era, right? That's mostly like the background stuff. And then once I became director, that's when we really started to push off to doing game development itself. I wasn't, of course, like starting out, you know, not everyone is like exactly perfect or like just super geared for it at first, but over time I just learned how to adapt to being the leader, and honestly, I'm pretty proud of myself for doing that. So could you repeat the first question again? Because I just gave the timeline. So yeah.
just wanted to kind of like add on this note is when I joined the team, it was basically you was like one of the very first people I got to meet like during the interview.
Oh yeah.
And initially I thought, okay, it's just going to get like a general meetup just to get to know each other, but then it turned to be like a 2-hour hey, so I'm Taco, this is the rest of the team, let me give you a detailed description of what everybody is like in this team. And I enjoyed it so much, where later on and kind of like I was like so excited to join in the VC calls and get to meet everybody. And seeing like the passion coming from you is so exciting to see as well, that you put so much effort into that. And obviously, when you became director, I think I speak to from all of us from the team. I think you manage your role as a director very well, and you adapt to all of your stuff. So, and I'm applauding you in that aspect that you're handling it very well. And I think without you, we wouldn't have come so far of releasing the prologue and for the upcoming chapters that we are going to have. So, I'm sorry I have to slime in here, but it's basically just wanted to add on that note. But back at the topic at hand.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I correct myself.
But at the topic at hand, the question was what you specifically enjoyed during the development of Chapter 0.
Okay. So what I particularly enjoyed, like I said, the whole making friends part, right? That was the first thing.
Right.
Wait, Shay, do I go on what I learned about what I learned in Chapter 0 as well? Or do you want me to just go on what I liked?
Let's go with general first. Like, what you liked about Project Jean Scarlet?
Sure. Well, yeah. First of all, yes, we were making a game full of like 16 students that are diverse, and I'm just saying the entire like development team behind it is also extremely diverse. It's insane. Everyone literally came from like anywhere around the globe, mainly from America, but it's like, whoa, all of you guys are all scattered around. We all have different time zones. How are we gonna work around that, right? So, yeah, that was fun. Another part of the team I really like, I can't say too much on this because it's hilarious, but every time someone posts like work and like the general chat for the team,
right,
yeah, I mean let's just say we have a very interesting way of complimenting the person who posted. But once like someone once someone posts that work in the general chat, a lot of people just start like encouraging the person, like, wow, this is so good, and then like it just starts like building hype for the person, and it's hilarious. And like the drive just keeps going, right? Someone posts something that's so pretty, and then suddenly like a day later, oh my god, guys, I just figured out the entire code of Eden's Garden. Like Sweden just said that, and we're just like, wow. Anyway, it's like the most normal thing on earth, like the most outrageous, amazing like things done by people on this team. It's like gets the most like normal / like strangest reactions from people on this team. So yeah,
it's so funny because like Chaka could literally post an image with like a stroke of a pencil, and everybody would kind of like compliment it. Oh my god, Slay bestie, this is such amazing, or this is going to be late when it's final. That's like the essence of the team.
The PR team, also known as Shade, told me not to say this. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm not allowed to say like what how the team compliments people. I'm not gonna say it. Don't worry.
Yeah. Okay.
But I love how another thing I really like about this team. I know you said the development of Chapter 0, right? But in my opinion, there isn't really anything like in a process that I particularly enjoy other than really like more of people related. But another thing I really like is that how honest some of you guys are in a team. Sweden.
Right.
But there was a time in Chapter 0's development where it's me, Sweden, and Saze as like the big three. And every day we would just wake up and it's like, oh, what's the next problem we're gonna deal with?
Yeah.
It was so funny. And we just went through so much just to get something to happen in the game. So
we can talk about this topic later when it comes down to the release of Chapter 0. But before we talk on this topic further, I would like to ask Juve on like from a perspective as a consulting director, what you like particularly enjoyed like in the works of developing Project Eden's Garden up until today or Chapter 0.
Yeah. So my favorite part is always what I kind of call the release war room, which is the day of the release. So just to like peel the curtain back ever so slightly, releasing a game, especially to the magnitude of Eden's Garden, it can be pretty intimidating in the sense that there's a lot of moving pieces. Obviously, the game itself has to go live, but then there are posts on social media. In the case of Chapter 0, there was the walkthrough on YouTube. I mean, I won't list everything out because I'll naturally forget pieces, but there's probably 15 or 20 things that basically all need to happen at once. So what's pretty common and what I tried to bring in with my previous experience having shipped a couple of titles before Eden's Garden was just bringing a sense of calmness to that chaotic process, because everybody's on edge, everybody wants the community like the game. Obviously, like it's even amplified, one, because this is a group of students that for a lot of folks, for a majority of the team, this is the first piece of software they've ever launched before. So everyone's a little bit on edge. There's a massive community on the Discord that are just waiting for us to hit the live button. And the second that you do that, you see all of the downloads start to flood in, people are posting about it, so on and so forth. So there's just something about that moment of being in that quote unquote war room. I don't remember exactly how many of us were there, but it was probably about 8 or so of us. I remember Sweden was on call, like pumping out new builds every time someone reported a bug or crash or issue. Taco and Shade were handling most of the socials, I believe. Star was like very engaged with the Discord. I'm gonna forget people if I try to list everyone off, but Anthony was like handling Game Jolt, I was handling Ch0, so on and so forth. And there's just something about the adrenaline of the launching of software and seeing all your hard work. We worked on this for literally, I think, like 1.5 years, 2 years. Some folks longer. I mean, Sweden and Taco, I believe, both have been on the team longer than I have, if memory serves. So this is years of people's lives, and it all comes like up to that moment. That's like what all the work was for. So that was Chapter 0's launch. The launching war room was definitely like my favorite memory of that. And it's just game development in general. I feel like you're always just working for that big moment.
And this is something that I can totally relate. And I was very fortunate that the release of Chapter 0 was my very first game, like at this scale, that I kind of like released as a technical producer, and still like was very, very happy that it was so well received, because so many of us were kind of like scared about what the community thinks like when it inevitably comes out, especially like, and we didn't even talked about like the involvement with influencers. We had Weeby News, Blaze, and Marcy, basically all of them playing them beforehand, and obviously we had the impression that they were a little bit biased because they were allowed to play the game earlier. But then after we saw like the initial impressions by the community as to so many people loved the series, like, or literally was like something like that Spike Chunsoft has made, just was like so heartwarming and grateful coming from you guys, where I was very, very excited that you guys loved it, and hopefully we'll love it for the future chapters as well. One thing I wanted to note here as well, this is something that you unfortunately guys didn't see, because we were all cramped in our private Team VC chat. But during the release, like half of the team turned their camera on, and they were basically like in a suit. Like it was like a very, very very professional professional setting, and I don't know who started it, but like the first people kind of like appeared in with their cam in suits, and other followed too. Like even myself, I just grabbed the nearest like suit I have and put it on, turned my webcam on. It was such a interesting kind of like voice chat call we had during the release, and just wanted to add that on that note. But yeah, speaking of technical support, our lovely Sweden, who had to somehow go through all this and survive this miracle. First of all, props to you, and thank you so much for like handling all of the live operations, and also like making a low spec build for the people who had problems on like loading the game initially. I know we had some problems that we faced in terms of like talking about this. Just don't want to like talk too much about it, just want to give you the stage. But before we go with like the problems that we had, I just wanted to ask you what you like particularly enjoyed during the development of Project Eden's Garden.
Oh, enjoyed. I was about to be like, oh yeah, I remember release date.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah. So what was the most enjoyable part about Eden's Garden? Probably, I think one of the coolest aspects of any point in time I've had in Eden's Garden was just designing tools that would just compress so much like time and effort down into just chunks that sped up development a lot. Shade probably knows what I'm talking about, because I don't remember. I think it was the trial camera override that I was talking to you about, and I think it was that paired with another tool that I'd made, and we were popping off because it was like, oh, this is awesome. Because they're, go ahead.
So basically, to give you guys some context, when we initially had a prototype version of Project Eden's Garden, you can kind of like imagine that the first really version that we had was like the trial section, because a lot of systems were involved, and basically Saze, Sweden, and I were kind of like testing if everything works fine in terms of like visuals. And I faintly remember that like one day Sweden was very hyped, and I joined the call and was like, Shade, you have to see this, what I did. I transcended quite literally, and basically he developed a tool that made it easier for the writers as well as for like other developers to have any kind of like animations that you see when specific characters are talking within the trials. They are dynamically made, so it's very easy to set up these animations, because otherwise it would have taken a lot longer to like finish up the entire trial section. And with Sweden's involvement of making a specific tool for that, it kind of like skyrocketed the production in terms of like developing that trial, and this was something that he really was proud of showing, and I was and Saze and I was just like popping off, and it's like, oh my god, this is amazing to see. There's a lot of memes in
it was
that.
just it was just the basic idea was that the trial camera had different like set animations, but the trial camera override allowed the possibility to pretty much focus that animation at different like positions. So with the most specifically the height, so having the same animation but at different heights actually ended up adding a bit of difference to what the animations sort of look like a bit. But the important aspect was that it gave the writers or other developers, because the writers also use this tool, more control of what they specifically wanted to see when playing the game. That's why there's a lot of polish when it comes to aspects of the trial, at least the dialogue section.
And I want to like honor Soze here. Something that I don't know if the community like knows about this, but all of the kind of like swerving animations, camera pannings from one character to another, all of these were handmade edited by Soze herself to kind of like perfect the entire experience from the start to the end of it. And big ups to Soze for going through every single kind of like line dialogue there is to make it look like an official Danganronpa game. So huge respect to her. It wouldn't look as nearly amazing if she didn't do all the hard work.
Yeah, honestly, like the amount of polish and how she went through just to make the game look so good, it's just, oh my god. Thank you, Saze. I know you're there.
And in terms of like the amount of playtesting polish that went through this the prologue, like the amount of like bugs she found, it was amazing. I have like a list of every single bug, like some of mine included as well, of that she found during her playthroughs, and it was at least over 100 entries. So it's to give you some sort of like perspective, each bug has been reported in terms of like with a video or text description, and Sweden kind of like fixed them all.
So, I had to go through everything and fix it.
So
we still didn't get all of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think we mostly.
You never do. You never do.
Yeah. And that's something that's to be expected at the end of the day, because we're just like a fan game. We're not a AAA studio that kind of like checks all the boxes on all specific kinds of like areas that there could be something happening. We don't have a specific QA team who can basically work on that stuff. But all the more is that that the game was kind of like a stable version and people could play it, or at least the majority of it, and that actually, in my opinion, makes it a very good release for the people who enjoyed it and for the people who watched it on our YouTube channel instead, who was, by the way, played by our consulting director extraordinaire, Jove, by the way, who will be also doing the honors for Chapter 1 as well. As I'm knowing you will do it.
Did you just volunteer me? Okay, sounds good.
It's official, guys.
I want to say one more thing. If nobody got me, I know Saze got me. Can I get an amen in the chat?
Amen.
Oh man, oh god, you're so amazing, guys.
Sorry, a woman. There we go.
A woman. Right. So, like, since we're at the topic at the day of the release of Chapter 0, I wanted to kind of like dive deep into this specific aspect. because I just wanted to talk about like how crucial like a game release is, and if there's anything that you have learned during the release of Chapter 0 that you kind of want to kind of like work on for any future iterations. Taco, would you like to start off first?
All right, just give me 1 second. I'm writing something down. The chat is going lively. Love y'all, by the way.
I love that one guy who said "a them."
Actually, well, actually, this is going on. I'm looking in the Pegcast questions, and I have a text document open where I'm writing down each question and writing out answers just to prepare for that.
Perfect.
Oh yeah. One more thing regarding questions, because we only have like roughly 2 hours in this podcast. I will be taking the questions that are unanswered and throwing it in a devlog, by the way. Oh, and one more thing, y'all should totally see the next devlog. There's a surprise waiting for all of y'all. That's one thing I'll say.
Yeah.
True, actually.
Yeah, it's going to be a
Anyway,
big surprise.
So on to what I learned, okay? So first of all, the most important thing, this is still something I'm working on till this day. I'm still trying to get the hang of it, but overall from Chapter 0, I did learn that this is a big thing. It is prioritization. Because there are certain tasks out there in PEG that, oh my god, you have to get it done first before anything else. Such as the design document. I'm so sorry, Sweden. Oh my god. That was interesting because, okay, so if y'all don't understand what I'm trying to say, when you're starting any game development of any sorts, or just anything that is like related to developing the mechanics as well as, you know, giving a programmer something to work with, please design a game design doc. That will be so helpful for them. If not, they will be kind of swerving around the place, like kind of just saying "fuck it, we ball" and to just go ahead. Don't do that, please. You will tire the programmer out.
Basically, for like the first half of development, I was pretty much just programming blind because I didn't know. And see my 200 hours in V3 for what I did in the meantime, just to research what to do.
Very much so. So now, yes, there are certain tasks out there you should get right first. Number one is the core design of your game. And just in general, assets that would be dependencies. So what dependencies really mean is that, you know, if something isn't completed, another person cannot complete it, and yep, those kind of tasks are the most painful and the hardest things to complete, because usually they're extremely heavy in terms of what you need to tell other people to kind of do in order to get what you want to see in the game. So yeah. There are also other tasks such as, like, of course, for example, speaking of prioritization, right, you will have to know a certain point where enough is enough. You cannot just keep going, because as a perfectionist myself, I'm a retired perfectionist, but as a perfectionist myself, it's really hard for me at first to like really stop when I was lining like a lot of the ref sheets for Eden's Garden. So actually around like half of the ref sheets were done by me, and the other half is like Nefas. So I did like the coloring work for Winona and then like all this stuff. And yeah, there is a certain point where it's just like, oh my god, I spent like 16 hours on line art, I have to stop. Yeah, I have to wrap this up. So learning how to say enough is enough is another thing. The next thing is actually scoping. So this is actually one thing I've seen a lot of big game projects, such as sometimes fan games, like don't really do much, which is to kind of like see what they're gonna throw into like the first release or chapter. So sometimes, admittedly, we do get a little bit over ambitious at the start on what we wanted, but over time we just learn like, okay, you know, is it really worth putting that extra animation in there? Is it really worth like going through all that pain and suffering just for this character to do this? Yeah, we really have to ask ourselves. Exactly. We really have to ask ourselves those questions. I remember watching Sweden code, spending 3 days trying to make Ava stand up in that one scene. That was hilarious.
Oh no.
But yeah, no.
Yeah.
really like knowing all that will really help you in game development. That's my advice, and also as well as what I learned in chapter 0. And of course, like fourth thing is that I learned how to be a leader in general. So of course, over the years before I actually went into Eden's Garden, I did do leadership roles. Like, don't get me wrong, I did. But most of those roles are for very short projects. So like, you know, school projects that usually last for maybe like at most 3 months, or just maybe say some volunteer work, not like game related, but like just volunteer work in general that lasts about like less than a year. So really Eden's Garden, like, wow, this is like this giant piece of like this project, right? This is a giant hunk of content. You really have to know how to like split them up, you know? And well, being a leader also makes you really learn how to have people skills. So beforehand, before I became like the extrovert that everyone knows on the stream, I was actually the most shy person on earth, and I was actually the biggest like I would not talk to anyone type person, and I would just stick to my little corner of the room. I was a wallflower. But really I learned that like networking, talking to people, you really have to make an effort for it. You can't just like sit there and expect people to talk to you, as much as like as harsh as that sounds. You really have to go out there and just like show yourself to the world. I also learned how to, of course, as time goes on, still doing it till this day, believe in yourself and staying confident. And another thing I learned is that what's really important is the friends you make along the way. And a bonus last thing that I learned is snacking past 9 p.m. is pretty bad for you. So if you want to lose weight, please do not snack past 9 p.m. Really, it really helps. Maybe you can shift it to 7 p.m. afterwards. But really, all those people trying to lose weight, don't do that. As someone who like stay up late just to do development work, or just in general work, I'm a big workaholic. Just try to not eat too much. Yeah, you'll be fine.
You heard it here, folks. Remember to scope your project, write GDDs, and remember not to eat anything past 9 p.m. With that being said, let's talk. Let's reach out to Juve on having, like, since you were kind of like in this consulting role, was there like anything you think you saw like that could have been better, like upon the release of the prologue, and would likely want to kind of like enact it in a more productive way on that sorts?
Yeah, absolutely. Looking back, I think the one thing, this actually ties back to my last answer about that war room, right? The day of launch, that, you know, emotions, tension even a little is high. Everybody just wants to get it out the door, big release. One thing that I wish I had prepped the team for a little bit better, and one thing that I'm very sensitive to, this was kind of like part of my postmortem, post chapter 0 going into chapter 1 development, is I want to be a little careful with the way I say this, but basically just like tempering your expectations for the community's reaction. It's not the best way to articulate it, but what I mean by that is this game for the developers is their baby. I mean, again, I'm a broken record here, but this is the first release for a majority of the developers on this team. And I remember very distinctly, like, this is a big community, and it's an amazing community. The people here are incredibly, friendly and all that other things. But at the end of the day, we're putting out art, and art is, in some ways, is created to be critiqued. It's also created to be adored and admired. But naturally, there will be people who are critical, who wish we would have done things differently, or have their notes, or what they would have done differently. And when you're a young developer and you've been working on a project for years and this thing is your baby, like it can be hard reading that, even if the criticism or the whatever is meant in the most positive way possible, constructive way possible. It's hard not to react and not to feel the need to be either defensive or anything like that. And I think that was a good learning for this team. Was, when we did the release, obviously there was a ton of positive reception. I mean, within the first month, I think it was, or so, we had over 100,000 downloads, and the community sentiment was just so overwhelmingly positive and supportive. It was amazing. but there were moments where, like there were some crashes, people had some issues, and all of that other good stuff. And I wish I had prepped the team at large, and myself for that matter, better in being prepared for that. Because as we've kind of already alluded to, no game launch is going to go perfect, right? If you've played any major AAA game in the last 5 years, especially if it's like online multiplayer, servers go down, bugs emerge, sometimes game breaking, so on and so forth. And some people are just going to go with the punches and be like, okay, we'll wait for the devs to fix it. And other people are going to get upset about that and voice the fact that they're upset. And that can be hard as a developer, especially when you've been putting so much blood, sweat, and tears into the project. So going into the release of Chapter 1, I'll be aiming to, ensure that the team is kind of just mentally ready for that. It's going to happen. It's impossible to launch a game flawlessly. It's just, if you know game development and you know how the pipeline works, it's so needlessly complicated. I mean, I tell the team all the time, it's a miracle we got this game done the way we did. We released the prologue. It literally, like every game release is a miracle in its own right. So just being prepared that it's not going to go perfectly. There are going to be bumps in the road. We have to be ready to respond them. And it's all about keeping a level head, not being reactive, rolling with the punches. And at the end of the day, being proud of your work, regardless of what, one individual might say on the internet. So that was a good reminder to me in light of Chapter 0's release, for sure.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree on that. It's especially at these crucial times when things are about to getting released to keep a cool head. And something that I think we have mentioned before is that since Juve was kind of like handling the live operations for releasing and that, and he had like all of the knowledge, it was very structured, and we had a very smooth release up until the point when we had our first like low spec built up. So props to you once again for actually helping us on getting the prologue out in a fast and ordinary fashion. Really have to thank you for that.
Hell yeah.
One more thing, right?
Yeah.
Some more additional advice. This is one that really I had to learn the hard way. But to really like create strong bonds with like your friends and whatnot, don't be afraid to get into arguments.
Yeah.
Sometimes honestly, like you will walk out of, if you're a person that like knows how to deal with conflict, right? You'll walk out of an argument like having a better bond with another person, in my opinion. Like you have to at least have one fight before they can become your bestie.
True. I yell at Soze all the time.
Soze yells at me all the time. So yeah.
If you're not yelling at Soze, you're not a real one.
It's so true. The OGs who know how to argue with Soze.
Okay, just that you guys know, the fucking the cat costume bit is an internal joke. So I'm not actually wearing one. It's just
I know you are.
Okay, I actually am.
You liar. Yeah.
You liar.
Now we know why the webcams are off today. Okay.
So yeah, just nothing happened. Whenever you see cat, it's just a cat. Okay. Now moving on to Sweden in regards to what could have been done better, and I kind of like prefaced this with saying something back then, but how did you kind of like experienced in terms of like things like purely from a programming perspective that you didn't know back then, kind of like is beneficial now and would have had used it in the past?
Knowing like literally anything. for those who don't know, I never made a game before now.
True.
Like this was my first attempt at like doing anything in Unity. So I learning like a lot of the extreme like or just like good strats or good architecture. If you're a programmer, learn design patterns. Oh my god, learn design patterns. God, that would have been awesome to know. Learn how to use interfaces. That'll probably save you so much time. Dude, name like anything that you could do in programming, that'd be on the list. That compared with like anything Unity related to.
So to go on a very quick rant here, I just wanted to mention, like, I just wanted to talk to you guys about the courtyard room, the courtyard scene. So, most of you guys don't know this, but making an open, kind of like semi-open area where you have a skybox and something like that in Unity is very, very hard, especially if we usually have rooms that are in an enclosed space. And the reason I'm telling you guys that is we had so many passes or renditions, especially in lighting and some assets, because since we used some foliage here and there, but also kind of like considering that we want to optimize that stuff, the courtyard was like one of the rooms that took over like the most changes out of all other rooms. And like, and this was like the grand reveal that we wanted to kind of like flex on what we can do, I guess. But getting it to a point, Sweden and I like broke our heads multiple times just for this specific room. But yeah, Sweden, do you know like what the process on your end was? Can you tell me?
For which room? Courtyard?
Courtyard or any other room, I guess. We can also talk about the trial if you want to.
Yeah, I was honestly going to say I thought the trial was way worse because we goofed on the trial. I think the courtyard just needed like optimization. Oh, you're probably talking about like the skybox thing that we had to deal with.
Yeah.
So the camera that we were rendering dialogue with, I forgot what the reason was, but I think there was some sort of strand of code that we actually really needed to keep, and it was causing. It pretty much allowed us to not have this a skybox in Unity to show, so we pretty much had to create like a very horrible poly mesh of a skybox to use instead, right. Which ended up working out fine, but it was kind of annoying to like have to deal with. I'm sure now I could probably fix that, but the trial was so much worse because Shade had manually placed all the lighting, and we had to. We had two variations, the 2.5D trial version and the actual trial gameplay variation. These were two different scenes, but we used the same model, but the lighting for them was different because they had different sizes. The trial room is probably 3 times bigger than it actually is, like compared to the rest of the game in terms of just size alone. And because of that, it means, Shay, did you actually like have to replace like all the lighting?
Yeah. So basically, whenever whenever there was a new change coming up, like for example, there was a new texture on one of the curtains, I had to manually resize the entire scene in very specific values, because if I didn't take these values that Sweden sent me, the lighting will entirely look off. It would just look weird. So I did so many revisions that I memorized the position, the scale, and the size of the whole trial room, so that I kind of like without looking typed these specific values. It's like I was doing math. Like I'm very bad at it, but at this point I was like a math professor at this point. It's like, okay, so I have to scale it like this so that it looks like good on this end. It was a very interesting experience, to say the least.
One more thing I do want to add is that I was there when Shade was like baking the lighting for the trial room, and I could say that I watched him had a 4-hour mental breakdown, and that was I felt so bad because as time went on, I could tell that he was like just how do I explain this? He was just like rotting. Like that's the best way I can explain it, because Unity would not like refuse to even like cooperate, and we had to work around it. Turns out it was like the light map resolution, but like that took so long to fix. Oh my god, I was just watching.
And the thing that hurt me most, it was one button switch, like one check off, basically, that fixed everything after 4 hours. And it was so frustrating that I didn't uncheck this just to see if it worked or not. And it finally worked, and I was okay, I'm not touching this ever again. Like whenever somebody is talking about like the trial room, I'm getting like flashbacks to my stuff, and it's like, no, please.
Yeah, you need a therapy, dude.
Yeah. But yeah, so the things we do for the trial room, I guess. Yeah. So actually, since we're like almost like past an hour, or like 11 minutes past an hour, I would like to end up with like a final question before we move on to the FAQ section. Just a general reminder to you guys, if you still haven't asked your question, now is basically the time to post it on Petcast questions, which should be right above our stage VC. Of course, we'll make sure to answer as many questions as possible as we can before we kind of like wrap up this entire session. And as Taco mentioned, we'll make sure to ask the questions that were left unanswered in the next devlog to kind of like justify our amount of time that we had to spend here. All right, so just basically a very quick question before we switch on to the FAQ section. What do you think of the future of Project Eden's Garden? Let's start with Sweden first, because it took him the longest for him, I guess. Yeah. So what do you think like the future of Project Eden's Garden will be heading? You think it's like going on a good way, or like what are your thoughts basically on that matter?
I think chapter 1 will probably be a more deciding factor as opposed to like how chapter 0 was. The reason being is because chapter 1 should have pretty much all base Danganronpa mechanics. And so with that complete, one, how people receive it will be an indicator of where we need to move forward, and two, past that, development should be a lot quicker because the tools I'll have made by then, I can just leave it to whoever to build, so long as I just create I'm basically just going to be creating documentation after chapter 2, and I can pretty much split up all the programming stuff up between the entire team. So it's
I mean, it makes sense, because it's like ultimately chapter 1 is, if not even like as big as the prologue release, since we'll be having so many other features coming up for the community to experience for the first time. So kind of makes sense at this point to like to have this kind of like
groundwork
mindset.
Foundation.
Yeah. Juve, what do you think in regards to like the future of PEG?
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of what Sweden's saying a little bit, which is with Chapter 1's release, this marks us having a lot of the core tech for a Danganronpa fan game ready to go, right? The prologue was just a taste, and there was a lot of core tech there, right? The basis of a trial, dialogue progression, etc. But Chapter 1 really marks the first full, complete, traditional Danganronpa like chapter of the game. So for me, future of Eden's Garden, what does it look like? It kind of looks like figuring out. I've alluded to this. Tacos have talked about managing scope on projects. We've talked about the fact that people have literally been on this team for 2.5 years, maybe longer at this point. So it's a matter of the core architecture is there in the game. We finally got a full Chapter 1 release. Folks are going to experience the emotional highs and lows that come with a typical chapter. I'm not being too specific here, but the stuff that happens in games like this, they'll experience it, and things will happen. And from there, as the development team behind this, it's a matter of how do we take that core architecture and continue to roll it forward in a way where we can keep the community engaged with our story as we continue to tell it. Because this being a fan-made project, naturally it's our responsibility to release things in a timely manner, to manage scope so the team is able to kind of handle the project and deliver it in a timely and reasonable manner, and just continue to build off of everything that we've done over the last several years. And bring this thing to the finish line. So that's what I'm eager to see. I'm eager to take a step back, have a post-mortem with the team. How did Chapter 1's development go? Hey guys, we have a really strong foundation here. What is it going to take to get us to the finish line and tell the complete version of this story that we all want to tell to this community. Really kind of looking forward to that, and yeah, just kind of seeing how everybody reacts to chapter 1. No doubt there will be, like I said, lots of emotional highs and lows for the community.
Of course.
That's all I'll say.
All right, and lastly, Taco, as the director of Project Eden's Garden, what do you think?
Well, honestly, when I think of the future of PEG, I feel pretty happy about it. So, of course, needless to say, hard work is needed to reach there. And the one thing I do envision about this team is that I think every member of this team, and I think everyone would agree with me on this, as everyone on the team, every member of this team would go very, very far. And this game is, in my opinion, how I see it as a training ground for me. So, a very, very tough training ground. This entire project is like a volunteer project, right? While that is like a pretty tough thing to manage, because of course, like sometimes like life really gets some of the members, and we are always there to support them, but sometimes they are not able to work for quite a while, or like we are slightly understaffed at sometimes, although most of the time we are actually fine. Being a volunteer project, there's actually some benefits, which is that we can be here to make risks and reach as high as possible, and we're not afraid to make any do anything that's like a bit out there, whether it's story based or even mechanics. Although I'm just gonna say this, I wrote this in my notes in bold sans serif and font size 26. I'm not paying for anyone's therapy.
True.
I mean it for the audience. When you play this game, yeah,
Get well soon.
get traumatized, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
But as a big project like this, one thing I've learned to really keep my head high, right, looking forward, because this is 6 chapters long, including the prologue, that's 7, right? That's an insane scope for a project. But honestly, I've learned to kind of keep every chapter as manageable as possible and not to burn myself out, and consistency is key. So recently, because I think it's fine if I say this, because this podcast is not that time sensitive, but at the moment I'm actually currently recovering from this pretty bad medical condition, and it's taken quite a lot of time off the project, my attention off the project, to really recover from this. So really having one week break off to PEG is insane for me, because I'm just oh my god, I have not really done anything for 1 week. Technically I still did some things, but I'm just talking it's lesser than general, but I'm oh my god, I haven't really done much this week. But I've really learned to kind of sit back and kind of look at a project as a whole, and I'm just you know what, once you break it down and really a game plan for almost each of them, I think honestly the future looks pretty good. Yeah.
And I always wanted to do that, but let's just give a rest well, Taco, in the chat. Oh. So as someone who is very passionate about this entire project and making sure that even in this specific week it's being catered to, it's just going at the utmost respect and showing how much dedication and importance it is for our director. And as you can see, the community is very understanding about the fact that you're still trying to be as active as possible, and it's a huge respect of still doing that job, regardless of your condition. It's huge props to you, Taco.
Oh, thank you. Oh, one more thing. I do want to encourage everyone on this VC. I know there's a lot of young people here, so I do want to say some stuff, right? But I'm just saying, I'm actually as normal. I'm actually not that normal, sorry. I'm kind of weird. But I'm probably as weird as all of you in the audience. But I'm just saying, anyone can be a leader. It's just the amount of effort you put into it. Yeah.
Right. And
so,
I think
that's one thing I want to say.
I think it goes for everyone. We're pretty open to communication. So if you'd like to talk about anything, like obviously when we are available in our time, feel free to reach us out. Like when you see us in general chat, just say, hey, just say hi. I would love to meet you guys and just talk about all kinds of stuff. And I would like to support everyone in their endeavors, or people who'd like to go on and try their like part in game development, in getting an interest into it. I think it goes to show that dedication can be born from everyone, and goes through on basically starting off something unique that could inspire any people from that. Who knows, like when like Project Eden's Garden is done, how many people have been inspired by this specific game, and so on and so forth. So I'm very positive as well as for the future of the game, and going forward from this, and hopefully we can see we will see the end of this project with you guys. And with that note, I think it's time that we kind of like shift over to our FAQ section, where we'll be answering some of the questions that the community has posted on the podcast questions. Before we start, a big shout out to Anthony and the mod team for moderating this chat. I know I haven't said enough, but big props to them to actually making sure that nothing goes undermined and making sure that everything works. So huge respect to you guys. Thank you so much for being here and helping us. Wouldn't have been wouldn't have been so overwhelming if it weren't for you guys. All right, so let me just go to the very top of that. So as it now stands, we have about 40 to 50 minutes of answering the questions, and I think the best way and how we going to handle that is I'm going to read out these questions, and you guys, usually we did that with the interviews with the influencers, just by saying, I think I can answer that, and by just giving up a statement. And if any one of you would like to add on that statement, feel free, so that we kind of like keep a minimum of interrupting each other. All right, so do you want to say something, Tago?
Yes. I do want to like take a slight lead in the questions, because like I do want to like answer as many as possible. At the same time, like I do want to give as concise of explanation as I can. So like most likely on instinct, I'll probably be the first to answer it. Just saying that first.
No worries.
I'm afraid to accidentally interrupt. Yeah.
You're the director of Project Eden's Garden. You should 80% of 90% of the questions you practically will answer them all. So it should be fine.
I know, but like, come on now, all our teammates are great.
True.
Okay, go on.
I've written down every question that I'm able to answer, because a couple of them were.
Could you send that to me through DM so I can like kind of like lead it to you, if you don't mind, or just send.
I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, I'll just copy and paste this to you.
Perfect.
It's pretty big.
All right, so let's not waste any time further and begin with the first question, which is from Miorine. Oh, I'm sorry, by the way, if I butcher any of you guys' name. Just spam ping me if I say it wrong. I'll try my best. So the first question is from Miorine, who asked, will these podcasts be put on the official YouTube channel? So I think I would answer that question, since it's mainly revolving about social stuff. So basically, the plan is to like release these podcast episode roughly about a week from when it's actually like after the live event. So by the time we are kind of like talking about the second episode, the first episode would be put in YouTube. Mainly the reason is that we want to edit it and make sure that everything works out fine, and I don't get slaughtered by the PR team, which is basically myself and Taco included. So just give us some time when we kind of like edit all of that stuff, and we'll putting it in YouTube, making sure that the algorithm notices us and we don't do like any shady tricks. And there's also the talks about putting it on other social media, but if we will be basically announcing that if the time comes. So stay tuned on that endeavor. It will most likely land on the YouTube channel first. On other social media, we have to see. All right. So much for
Oh yeah.
the first question. Thank you so much for telling us the question. So the next question is from Vanny Star. Oh yeah, it's basically the same question and regarding if it's going to be
Shane.
recorded. Yeah.
Could I answer the one from Chat Prime? I think it's interesting. I'm
yeah.
gonna read out the question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Despite the death order already being completed a while ago, the first execution was only recently storyboarded. Are the concepts for the other executions set in stone, or are you guys juggling ideas for what you want each one to be? So, fun fact, the first execution, I'm not gonna really like talk too much about it because, of course, sensitive topic. But I do want to say that it actually went through around 3 iterations before we settled on like the final 3rd iteration. How that really ties into like how that's like really relevant to your question is that sometimes sudden inspiration as the best sort of inspiration. I mean, it's still the most like sudden inspiration doesn't mean it's like the least inspired. It just means that it just suddenly came to me kind of thing. It's like a aha moment. But so it went through like around 3 iterations, right? And so with that said, a lot of the other executions in the series, we do have like a general idea of how that's gonna go. However, that doesn't mean that it will not change because the first one actually already changed. That's how I'm gonna answer that. Yeah.
And I know you guys are very eager regards any more details regarding the executions, but please, guys, know that this is like very, very spoiler territory, and obviously we will not talk about any nuances or things that happen in it. So please keep that in mind because we want to save that experience for you for when you finally will play it. All right, perfect. The next question, it's kind of like 2 questions. It's coming from Sebastian Draw Stuff, and the first part is regarding voice actors. How do you manage the voice actors? Like, is there a deadline for voice lines and such? And I think Ch0 can answer it, or I can also answer it if you want.
Yeah, I'll answer it.
Okay.
So, for voice actors, of course, I'm not gonna speak for the voice actors themselves, but I will like speak on how like we really manage the deadlines for voices. How it really goes is that first of all, the writers, especially me and Starlight, Starlight being the VO lead, Starlight and Sauze will first go on making an entire sheet for the voice actor themselves. So a dedicated like voice acting sheet as with like the naming conventions as well as what the line entails as well as the context behind those lines. So after we calculate the amount of lines there is, maybe like there's around 150 lines or like maybe 200 lines or something like that, we will sort of work out a deadline with them. So mostly how we really work out a deadline is that we will ask the voice actor, when do you think you can get this done? Or we just sort of have, because like we already have experience from chapter 0, we sort of base it off that. So maybe like, okay, maybe this voice actor around like a month they can get this many lines, or do they have any life circumstances underway? So yeah, we really work around it by asking them early, or just questioning like when they can really submit it. Yeah. All the voice actors on this team are especially talented. They do know how to do time management very well. Props to you guys. You guys are amazing. And yeah, as for adding voice lines to Unity, I'll pass this one to Sweden because you did mention it in the questions.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Yeah, I have this written down. Sweden, how do you add voice lines into Unity? So we use a tool called Fmod. That's like an audio plugin for Unity. And Justin, our sound effects guy, he mixes the audio files in Fmod. It's also like a application that you can use, and it can just work with Unity. And then those export pretty much little strings of text, and those texts are pretty much the connection to the audio file, and we just plug that into the game, and that's it. It's very quick, to do it. We just split it up between like most of the team to just cover all our bases.
And to one quick note to add in regards to how to manage the voice actors with their lines is, sorry, this is my like the PR guy Shay talking again here, but please keep like any questions regarding, hey, do you know when you're going to die, or like anything like in that sense, is they don't know as well, because we make sure that our voice actors know at least the least amount of things, because usually we kind of like have specific documents where they only see their line or get a specific context, so even they wouldn't know until like when they actually play the game of what actually transpires in the future events. So it would not be worth to kind of like ask our VAs to look up about that stuff. So if you would like to refrain from doing that, I would greatly appreciate this. But yeah, thank you so much for the question, Sebastian. Next up, this is coming from Milo AC, and Sweden sent me the answer to that. It's pretty funny. But the question, first question is, do you have a projected timeline on when the entire project will be completed?
I said probably 2028. My reasoning for this is for like the entire full-on all 6 chapters, or all however many chapters we decide to make. Let's pretend 6. If we take about a year development for each, that would mean that probably end of the year 2028 this game should fully finish, and so therefore 2028 or sooner than that technically.
And to give you guys some context, or the reasoning behind this is mainly the main factor when it comes down to developing fan games is time, since this is like our resource that we use the most when it comes down to developing these assets, coming from conception to actually like implementing into the engine. And we kind of like have to respect everybody's free time, since it's like made for free for you guys, and kind of like have to respect their availability on when they can actually work on that stuff. I mean, obviously it would be a different story if everybody is getting paid and working a specific set amount of hours. We would probably get it done much faster, but since we have a very strong opinion of making it for free for you guys, this is the main reason why it's taking so long. And of course we want to give you like a very unique experience to make sure it's polished like a diamond, as I would like to quote my dear VO lead Starlight whenever he gets this kinds of question. All right.
Oh, I do want to add on.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the reason why we haven't really like sent out like entire graph of the entire project, just out in the open, like the entire timeline, is because like Shade said, there are like, we need to respect the free times of these volunteers. And one more thing is, while everyone in this project is extremely passionate, there are times where it comes just random times where just life will hit them. Like now, you know, I'm recovering from stuff, and like, yeah, so like right now, we're experiencing some things like, you know, my leg being the thing. I think like a while ago, Anthony's hard drive got busted, and yeah, just a lot of things just happen out of nowhere sometimes, and it's the most like, sometimes it's just like very, oh god, you know, this had to happen at this point in time. So yeah. Sometimes development will take longer than we expect, or even shorter than we expected. So at the moment for chapter 1, it's currently looking like we're going pretty well with it at the moment. It's just that, like I said, there are like suddenly like some things that we can't really control, such as life stuff that would just hit people randomly on this team. So yeah, that's the one major like thing that kind of like sucks, that we can't really do anything about. So yeah.
All right, Milo, thank you for asking your question. The next one is basically concerning about 3D pipeline. I think Juve can also talk a bit about this specific question. This is from Ashikins, and basically their question is, what is the entire process of making a 3D model? Kind of like also fitting with the background that we currently have here. So Yeah, who would like to go first?
I was gonna say Taco definitely take this one. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, let's go.
I'm at the most tail end part of this with you, Shade. So,
Yeah.
so Taco can
I mean, I wanted to include you as well. I don't want to leave you out on this. But yeah, go ahead, Taco.
Thank you. The one thing I want to bring back what I said last time about like, remember when I said that there was some 3D assets that was scrapped at the start? Okay. So the reason why, so there are like 5 things to the pipeline, okay? I'll go through around 5 things. I might be missing one right now. The first of all is concepting. Second would be modeling itself. Third is unwrapping. That's very important. Fourth is texturing, and the 5th one is implementation. Actually, there's a 6th one that's lighting, but we'll get into that. So, for concepting, right, this was the one thing that was lacking from the previous 3D assets that was scrapped. There wasn't any direction or concept behind it other than like, oh yeah, this goes here, this goes there. But what we really did was that we kind of relooked into like how we could improve the entire like design of the thing and how everything can go into one cohesive like art direction / motif. Like I said, at the start, design is very important, right? Knowing what you want is important. So at the start, you would do like things like gather references. References are extremely important. They'll determine how your final product will look. So gather as many as possible. Don't be afraid to go out there just to find like images of like what looks great, what looks like, what is what you want, what is what you don't want. Kind of roll that out first. Get the vibes of the room as well as like the mood. And the second of all, in modeling, of course, this one is pretty standard. Modeling honestly is the easiest part of the process. You just kind of like make the model itself, And the third part, this is where it gets a bit painful, is unwrapping and cleaning up. So this part, this is where you find all your mistakes. You'll start seeing like, oh my god, there's an end gun here. End gun means something that's more than 4-sided. And you'll be like, oh my god, there's like this random like triangle. Why is this like 5 polygons and why is this 1,000 polygons? And yeah, you'll start questioning yourself, and you will have to know how to sort of quickly sort of like shoot yourself down and then get yourself back on your feet after like cleaning up. And while cleaning up, you also have to unwrap it, meaning like think of a 3D object as like a candy wrapper, right? It's like wrapped in a gift wrap. And what you do in unwrapping is you kind of take that apart so that in texturing, which is the next part of the process, everything is neat. So, for example, you have a straight line on this like object, right? Obviously, you have to lay it flat out so that you can draw that straight line instead of just like cutting it up into like islands and you wouldn't know what to do with it. Yeah. So, really, the entire thing is like pretty reliant on unwrapping itself. God help me. And for implementation, I'll just pass it on to Juve and Shade to talk about the lighting and implementation. You guys are the masters of that. You can go ahead on that.
Yeah.
Did you ever make lighting?
Did I?
Yeah, you did for.
No, I let Shade handle all that. Wait, have I baked lighting? I don't think
we're not
on this project, at least.
Anyway, sorry.
Let's just talk about the implementation.
I was gonna say I baked lighting in Unreal, but not in Unity. Hey, remember that funny Unity versus Unreal debate we had like a year and a half ago?
God.
Anyways, not for this podcast. No. Okay. Anyways, so yeah, as far as implementation, basically as I guess consulting director, I just try to find ways to be useful, to be frank, because you're obviously gathering from hearing Sweden talk, from Taco, and us alluding to other key team members, Star, Saze, etc. We have a plethora of superstars on this team. Justin, who's been very active in the chat, our voice actors, etc. So my job is just trying to find a way to be useful among all of these superstars. So once the 3D models are done, textured, all that good stuff, kind of move us on to implementation. Everything is up on our shared Google Drive. At this point, I'm basically just, ripping all these assets down, throwing them in Unity, trying to get them set up in a scene in a way that is compatible with how Sweden is kind of sequencing out the game. And at this point, it's where, this is where I'm asking questions in Sweden. Hey, can you check my scene out? Is it kind of properly set up in Unity? I'm reaching out to the modelers. Hey, like I think I'm missing a handful of textures, setting up materials, and basically just trying to match what they're getting in their 3D software, whatever they're using and building out of, making sure that what's in Unity looks as close to that as humanly possible. And once it all looks good in Engine, it's good to go. That's when I kind of throw it over the fence for the final step with Shade, who handles all of our amazing lighting.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to build.
Yeah, sorry, Sweden. I just wanted to quickly
No, you're good.
mention. So basically, yeah, as a final stage of creating these environments is lighting, which is one of, if not the most important step of creating a setting or a mood for the player to kind of like read the room of what is currently happening. For the people who played like the prologue, like when you start off in the underground alley and meet Ava for the first time, it's like a very dark and moody feeling, like something is weird or going on, up until the point of like actually meeting the other cast, where it's like a bit brighter, but it gives you like an eerie vibe on that. And for some people, it might look very easy. Just put some lights here and there and make it look shiny, I guess. But there's like a lot of like talk between other departments, especially with the designers, like our creative lead with Saze, making sure that each specific room has a specific purpose on how it looks like. And of course, optimizing the entire process for Sweden and for other people who will be working on specific scenes to make sure that the game runs smoothly without causing any issues. And this is like also a very crucial step, because usually if I see something that doesn't belong there, it can happen that the entire process, like for example, goes back to the texturing phase, because the specific UVs, like the lines of where something the texture ends and begins, may look very obvious, so they kind of like have to update that process. So just because we ended up at the lighting process doesn't mean it's like that we don't revisit the other kind of like processes. And yeah, like as the final step, it's kind of like the final boss of the entire process is Sweden himself, because he will be kind of like taking this scene and put it into and add the technical logic, the game logic behind of it.
Yeah.
And if he says that, that's actually a good sign. If he says, what the hell did you do again
Yeah, like
here?
what is
or
going
something
on?
like that.
It's usually
More often than not, he's saying, "What the hell's going on?" and we have to fix our stuff. But
Yeah.
sometimes we get it right.
Yeah. So and that's
Dining hall is a good
basically
example.
yeah. And that's basically how the process goes. Obviously, there's like some special like rooms that will be that have like specific things, like for example the tree room, where we have a specific cutscene going on where the entire room changes, and that's like a whole nother thing that we can talk about. But it's like catering to specific uses that things will happen and you learn things on the way. But as long as you kind of like keep this kind of like workflow, it's practically the same of usual game development outside of fan games. At least that's how I kind of like in my other projects have had a similar experience going through that. And like Taco said, the key aspect of it is just making sure that communication is being there, letting everyone know what the status of this specific asset is, and everything goes smoothly. All right, thank you very much, Ashikins, for asking your question. So
They have multiple.
the next one is from oh boy, Farnan, or F3RN4N, which is redirected to Sweden. Have you ever looked at code of any of the Danganronpa games to use in Eden's Garden? And as a side note, also please make the UI animations faster.
So for the first one, no, I actually dissected. I just dissected how the game played in Danganronpa. from playing the game alone. That's mostly how I do a lot of my research, because I know that since Danganronpa was pretty much like the kind of end result that I was going for, I just focused on that, and I would just think to myself, like, how would I go about, solving this problem, etc., or creating this. And as for the second side note, that's already on my log. I literally have a list of stuff that I'm going to be doing. We'll write the code. I do think it would be cool to see the code. I've never seen it myself. I do know, I think the people who do it's called the Spiral Framework. Those people do crazy stuff where I think they literally try to mod like original DR, but because it was Spike Chunsoft's in-house engine, it's extremely like difficult and complex. But if I could see it, that would be cool. But I don't know how well their infrastructure would be something that I could salvage or translate into what we're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, and for UI animations, yeah, it's on my log. It will be faster come chapter 1.
And
I'm going to do it towards the end of Polish.
And just to add something in here, we have to be very careful when we do anything in regards of Spike Chunsoft, mainly because at the end of the day, this is not an official kind of like thing, like game that we're doing. It's a fan project that's made for free, but anything that revolves like about their official products that they have released, especially when it's involving their code or any kind of like visual assets, we have to tread very carefully when it comes down to that, because we do not want to like mess with them in that sense.
Really,
because how like Nintendo, for example, handles their fan projects, so to say, and we do not want to be like the first example of setting into that. So, and there's also the fact that Danganronpa is like developed in an entirely different engine, so the actual code logic might be different, to that it can't not be really translated over there, although it might be a very unique experience to do that. All right, next question. I think it's back to you, Sweden, again. It's coming from Soup. What were some technical problems encountered while developing Project Eden's Garden? Was it hard to create a Danganronpa-like engine in Unity?
So for the first one, in terms of technical problems, the need for specific things to happen that weren't originally a part of Danganronpa, or at least mechanics that weren't like super evident, and it was just like stuff that the team had asked me to make. That stuff was probably the most difficult / annoying. A good Eva rising from the boiler room is a good example. Now the like Eva rising up, like the animation alone, that code wasn't hard to create. What the problem was is when the dialogue reader goes down the list of what, like the ordering in which what events should happen, like from showing the dialogue UI to pasting different images on screen. There was a problem with the ordering for that. That's why the Eva issue took me like 3 days, and I eventually solved it. And then in terms of creating a Danganronpa-like engine in Unity, it wasn't exactly hard per se. It was mostly hard because I didn't really know what I was doing, but now that I do, I love making like really cool tools now. Like I've already made multiple for, chapter 1 for our team to use, so yeah.
He's popping off, so to speak. All right, perfect.
Also, are you able to hear like anything in my background?
No, I don't hear anything.
Okay, thank God, because my walls are like paper thin, and I can hear family members speaking.
Yeah, I'm near walls too, so.
Okay.
All right.
That's what that noise is.
So the next thing, it's a similar question that was asked before. It's coming from Katsukuri. Basically, do you guys try to emulate the Danganronpa style, art style, writing style, coding style? We already answered that, if that's a thing. And if so, how do you guys do that? How easy, difficult is it? And a personal question, is Sweden actually from Sweden?
So let me answer the first part before we actually answer the finale of is Sweden from Sweden?
Yeah.
It's a burning question. So For the Danganronpa style, honestly, Nifas was the one who really started the direction of the art style first of all, right? But honestly, in my opinion, Nifas has a kind of a more unique, like slightly. It is inspired by Danganronpa, no doubt, but in my opinion, it's a little bit unique, and you can tell it's slightly like separate from the actual Danganronpa style, like shading wise as well as some line art points wise. Although line art is extremely similar to Danganronpa, but how we really sort of get inspired by the style and map it out is we use documents. We write down what is the do and don'ts of the art style, as well as knowing what we don't want for the writing style and whatnot. So currently on a team of writers, in terms of the writing style, we do agree together, like we kind of have this like unanimous like agreement on what we want the story to be and what we don't want the story to be, although like sometimes, you know, we do suggest some wild ideas for the story itself. How similar it would be to Danganronpa, I would say that our story is honestly like, while it is not connected to canon Danganronpa itself, nor does it have any canon Danganronpa characters in it, we are kind of inspired by Danganronpa and not really emulating the style exactly in terms of writing. Yeah. As you can see in the prologue, that is like a slight taste of it. In my opinion, our writing style is slightly more leaning towards realistic problems, if that makes sense. I'm not saying that Danganronpa doesn't have realistic problems, no. But it's more of that Danganronpa has a more bombastic way of showing that, you know what I mean? Like, I guess I know that all of you, like, of course, play the game or, like, watch gameplay of the game. So I think y'all know what I'm talking about when I say, like, some characters in Danganronpa have, like, extremely exaggerated and bombastic personalities. While in Eden's Garden, they're more sort of grounded, and we're kind of basing it on, like, less fantasy-ish, more, like real life, all this stuff. Like, we try to base it on this kind of circumstance and whatnot. We're not really a big fan of like, oh yeah, this is just anime logic. We're kind of, I'm kind of a stickler for things actually making sense, like universe wise. So yeah, that's what we're aiming for in terms of writing style. It's just mainly using documents.
And I would like to quote something from Rebus, since we had this question when we were getting interviewed by Weeby News. Basically, I kind of like started off that we are kind of like approaching an unorthodox pacing in regards to storytelling, which I kind of like elaborated in. Basically what the writers want to do is like every specific dialogue or specific scene that we want to invigorate to you guys has a specific meaning. Although we're not perfect, I'd like to preface that by saying that we'll try our best to make the best story that we can write, and not trying to have so many plot holes that it's kind of like unknown of unknown of whether or not they're getting resolved. And without telling you guys too much, we'd like to approach something that is kind of like unique, that brings to the premise of the Danganronpa franchise, and give this whole like playing a Danganronpa game for the first time experience, kind of like revitalizing that, to give you like a fresh new breath into the premise of this kind of like game. And yeah, with the upcoming chapters that we're going to have, oh boy, I'm hoping you guys are prepared. But yeah, that being said, thank you so much for your question. Following.
And also, I'm
ahead.
from Texas. I'm from Texas. Yeah. I'm pretty sure my great grandparents were like Swedish immigrants. I'm of Swedish descent, but I live in Texas, born and raised.
The good ending. All right, perfect. So the next question is coming from Manke, or MNKE. And it's a pretty simple question, is who is your personal favorite character for this game? Who would like to start first?
Me.
Go ahead.
Never, don't have one, never will.
Because
Oh, no.
God damn it, Sweden. Anyway, Honestly, okay, the 16 students, I love all of them equally. But with that being said, I have reasons for liking these guys more. But Tozu, Eloise, and Winona. Yeah, these three are my I love them a lot. There are some that are climbing to be my favorites, but I will not specify or say why. Yeah. I can't really. Well, first of all, Eloise, right? I do want to say that Eloise is actually one of the characters that actually drew me into this project, as well as Desmond, actually, but we'll get into that next time. I do like Desmond a lot, although he's not exactly my most favorite. Well, Eloise, yes, draw me into this project. Winona, because her ref sheet was very painful to color, and I have Stockholm syndrome. And Tozu, because I managed to recreate the character design, and I honestly like really love how it turned out. And with how the character is, I really think the design speaks for his own character. That's one thing I can say. Yeah.
Cool. Julie, what about you?
Yeah, so I've been outspoken about this through our various events. My favorite's Diana. It's always been Diana. It will always be Diana. No one competes with Diana. It's as simple as that. Shout out to Snow, who has done that character great justice. No offense to the other characters. Every character is great, but Diana is slightly greater. Simple as that.
Yeah. And as for myself, it has to be Jet. I'm like the physical embodiment of his personality outside of game development. So yeah, let's just leave it at that. All right, perfect. Just letting you guys know, we'll be just answering 2 more questions before we wrap things up. Also letting our other guys know as our backup recorders. But yeah, so the next question is from the most sane Damon Kinney. That question is, do you guys think Project Eden's Garden is worth all the hard work developing?
Yes. It made me go through like at least 3 character arcs to become what I am today, which I'm still going through a character arc technically, but yes, it's more in my eyes, it's more than just a project to me, and it's like literally part of my lifestyle right now. So yeah.
What about
Yeah,
you,
I mean,
Julie?
I'll chime in there and just say that, I mean, okay, so I point this out sometimes, and this is me maybe being like oversharing a little bit, but like in a lot of ways this team is far larger than it should be, and what I mean by that, I mean it very respectfully. It is very difficult to manage a large game development team. That's just the truth of it. There's a great ratio out there that suggests like for every 4 or 5 developers that you have on a game project, you should have 1 manager that handles, tasks, personality conflicts, so on and so forth. I don't know the exact head count of Eden's Garden when you count, developers plus mods plus voice actors plus, every like the supporting cast, video editors, so on and so forth. But it's like 50 or 60 people, I think, something close to that. That's the kind of the ballpark of what we're talking about here. And I've pointed out that is an incredibly difficult, an incredibly large group of people to manage, to keep on the same page, so on and so forth. So why do I point that out when answering the question, is it worth it? Because as I've already alluded to a couple of times throughout this podcast, and Sweden and Taco I think have kind of alluded to this too, for so many of them this is the first time they're getting to release their work, their art. And so yeah, it is difficult because it's an incredibly large group to manage. It's an incredibly challenging project. There's a ton that goes into it, and it is completely volunteer. There is no money to be made here, but at the same time, all of you are literally witnessing 50 to 60 people who their careers are being born through this project. Taco, I think, said very well earlier on that every single person who is working on this is going to go on to do amazing things. I mean, I'm talking about, look at any of the major studios that you respect right now, whether it be Bungie, Blizzard. Let me bring up Blizzard because I guess they're controversial. But look at any great studio and great game that you care about right now. I guarantee you, Taco, Sweden, Justin, Saze, all of these people, they're either going to be major contributors at those studios in 10 to 20 years, or they're just going to buck up and make their own studios and make their own great games. So what I think is special about this project is you are quite literally seeing the next generation of great game developers being born right in front of your eyes. So as difficult as it is, as much time as everyone's had to put into this thing just for a fan game, just for a fan, like whatever you want to call it, just for a volunteer project, however you want to label it, it is the stepping stone to something so much greater. And what's exciting for me, being the old grizzled veteran on the team, or whatever you want to label me as, is I get to be I'm so honored to get to be a part of that, because it's so easy to get old and cynical and gross, but seeing people like Sweden and Taco come into their true form, Saze, see them grow through the project and understand what they are capable of as contributors, but also and creatives, but also just human beings. It's the ultimate source of inspiration, and nothing beats that. Nothing supplements that. So absolutely, the project is worth it 10 times over.
Oh, one more thing. I love your name, the most Saint Damon Kenny. That's so hilarious, in my opinion.
I was about to say that as well. Yeah, Sweden would like to add on that as well.
Y'all got me a job, so I'd say it was pretty worth it. I don't know.
Literally, I mean, no, but let's talk about that. People were joining this project their freshman year of college, never having worked a job before, and 2 or 3 years later, look at these people starting their careers. Like, seriously, think about that for a second. Like, one of the hardest industries to break into. They say you have to know people. They say it's all luck. Look at Sweden. Like, look at Sweden.
I literally just applied, and they I had 2 interviews.
Bro was overqualified. Like, he was embarrassing cats out there. Like, he is teaching his seniors and leads how to do their job in some respects. Sorry, like flex. Sorry to flex for you. Like appreciate that for a second. That isn't normal. This is a very if you tried to recreate this group of people, you would fail 100 times over. It's something magical.
Oh my God.
and that's
Bro, you're hyping me up too much, man.
Well, or I'm just speaking the truth. I don't know.
But yeah, Juve speaks true. I mean, I started working on Project Eden's Garden as an artist here, and now I'm working for a game development company as a junior producer. So I'm very, very honored to have gotten this kind of like experience firsthand, and that Taco and Juve put in the trust of me of acting as a technical producer. And I'm very glad to have like encountered this experience. Yeah.
And I wanna because I've already done it for Sweden. I do it for Taco like literally 24/7. I'm Taco's like #1 cheerleader, have been since day one. But I do want to speak to Shade too. Like I was just messaging Shade earlier today. Literally the unsung hero of this project in many regards. Like, you're not going to meet someone who is more organized, more thoughtful, but also like the hard part of game development. Taco alluded to this. Taco's great at this. Everybody on this podcast is great at this, but it's hard to find people who will roll up their sleeves and do the dirty work. And I think what's special about Shade is not only will he roll up the sleeves and do the dirty work, but then he like so far exceeds your expectations. I don't want to spoil anything too much, but like, everyone knows here that we're going to be at San Japan. Point being is, Shade was helping us put together some materials for this upcoming event, and I was just like, Shade, can you like help out? Can you plug in here? Can you like kind of like shoulder some of the load so Anthony and I don't have to do like as much? And then like I won't be too specific because I don't want to give any spoilers or anything like that to the event. But like everything that we asked Shade to do, it's like, dude, we just asked you to do like a little, and like what he delivered on is like, oh my God, you just made this event. What's going to happen at San Japan is going to be special because of the work that Shade put into it. And it wasn't what we specifically asked for him. He just went out of his way to go above and beyond. And every single person on this team in some way, shape, or form has a similar story as to how they kind of rose above the occasion to do that. And that's why the community, that's if you're hanging out on the Discord, you're like, oh wow, this feels really special. Why does this feel that way? It's because every person contributes some way, somehow, in a way that they weren't necessarily asked to, but they do because they care. So
we call it power scaling and into our villain arcs. Yeah, on the team.
As a side note, since you guys got me a job, I've actually been, because I'm paid, so I've actually been throwing it a little bit of money back into PEG as an example. In the what is it, the prologue devlogs, the controller form, I'm gonna like probably buy half of the top controllers. If you haven't like filled out that form, you totally should. Please help me out. But based on the data, I will probably set up and go out and buy like as many controllers as I can, and come test day that we start polishing the game and doing play tests, I will go in and I will use every single controller and make sure hopefully some of them work, and probably give you guys an update based on that. So
yeah. And
anyway,
just an information, sorry, PR guy Shade back here. It's basically just about the San Japan event and some things that he invested. He didn't pay one of us on our team. It's just basically out of his own volition he did that. So do not worry about that fact, because if I didn't say that, a lot of people want. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I also saw a couple people posting like, "Oh, I wish I could make it to San Japan." We're gonna try our best to record the content. Anything that happens at San Japan, we're gonna try our best to have some stuff posted on YouTube. I'm sure we'll have some things posted on socials. So even if you're not able to make it out to San Japan, obviously, like, who the hell is going to the San Antonio, Texas in freaking early September? I get it, but we'll try our best to get content out there so you can feel kind of part of that journey, part of that experience for sure.
yeah.
All right, and I guess with that note, unfortunately, we are out of time. We're like 7 minutes out of the scope. As you can see, time flies by very fast, and a lot of people in the behind the scenes would like to end this, so I would like to respect their wishes, and would like to first of all, thank you guys for taking the time and day for participating in this podcast. I know you guys, 2 hours is a long time, and I really appreciate taking like the effort of like answering the questions with the best of your abilities, and as well as to you guys as a community for actually actively listening in and interacting with us throughout the past 2 hours. I'm very honored and very happy to have guys like you who are constantly excited about new updates regarding this project, and I believe I speak from everyone in the team that we deeply appreciate your support and help throughout this, and hopefully we'll continue getting that support when we release chapter 1 and following chapters of the game. So this has been our first episode of Project Eden's Garden. Once again, thank you all for joining in, and we will hopefully see you guys next week, where we will be talking about some more of the, let's say, voice acting sessions, I guess. Just to give you guys a little teaser on who will probably be there next week. We'll be announcing that as well as roughly the same time. So keep you guys updated in regards to that, and save your questions for there as well, as we'll be taking the time to go through these. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys hopefully next week.